What's up, dudes? We've got a lot to keep going through, so let's go. This is a general mapping of current flows in the Pacific. Something a little general, but something important of this is the interaction of the current going from, so hopefully you've seen my recent videos, or else this will make no sense. The current coming from along the eastern margin of Africa and from India, the region of India, that then propagated through Antarctica and into Australia and interacted with this other current that was flowing through here. Probably from up here as well, being fed that way to then flow this way, as well as like over here to go that way. So currents generally going through here that then interacted, and specifically did several things. One thing it did was they both ramped. So they're kind of running into each other and ramp and create like an X pattern where the current going east goes northward into North America, and the current going west goes northward into Australia and then into Asia. So they literally ramp off each other, but the current going eastward, also there's this other current involved going through here, going westward, and generally the black currents being pressures off of the continents from the current, so current flows going these directions, applying pressure, and then in the inverse direction. So again, this is like we were talking about in the last episode, where from the core region here, there's a tendency for pressures that go in both directions, westward from it and eastward from it generally, although there might also be some relationship up here to the secondary or the mantle puncture hole region. Okay, so this current though seems to wrap around, so I then drew it as the fuchsia current instead of continuing it as the aqua current here, which would have got kind of interacting with itself. I'll just change it to fuchsia, but it's the same current that then wraps around. So imagine it's running into these pressures and other pressures, so it physically wraps around here, but because there's certain pressure points, it's actually leading to like early break-offs where some of it goes off this way, some of it goes off this way, and off this way, and off this way, creating like ribs kind of thing, and specifically creating though propagations of current back this way that are interacting with other currents to then create boundaries over in this region. That's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, it's highly related to this location and currents going this way and bending. But I think the bend is related to basically that these are pushing that way. So then we've got, also this is the base map here is from Spagnoli et al., which is linked here. I'll just click it real quick from this paper. I just was looking for like a good world ocean map to just, and it had like terrain texture, so I was like, good, this is good, this map works. So we just went with that map. I don't really know what exactly all the details are, like what the purpose is. I believe these are like places they studied, like maybe some kind of sensing for some, whatever they're doing. But it's not really particularly relevant. Then in the next image, I was like, well, maybe this red current actually doesn't just kind of go up here. It really continues and bends specifically off of this area where the I can't go back and forth off of here, like underneath this, bending underneath it and going like that way. It's kind of what I was thinking, to then go to a region where there's current going this way in general. So it's basically joining a current that way, noticeably going where the Himalayas are and into that arc there, where there was just a current going. Going over there and just joining a current though. And then returning though, so then we got it going back this way to then go back over here and flow back through this width as the Earth expanded. Like this region was being created. And initially it was just flowing between all the continents, much more over here, while this current pushed it over to then make it widen out to basically come out this way and go up through this way to go up here. My thought was it goes on like the inner side, I believe. I'm not sure. It's a little tricky without really going into another map. Are you saying this map is your basis? No. But okay. It looks like I went this way with it. I drew the line on the left side, that's what I thought. But it's on the right side, it goes this way. Whereas now I've got some other currents. I guess going along the Gackle Ridge boundary and along this red current's boundary to then go down here. This one's related to current going into Australia on the western side. It's going south. So there's current going north on the eastern side of Australia and south on the western side that then actually gets across it and goes back because of this other current and its pressure, so it just bends back. What doesn't go this way and join it. It creates this boundary and goes up this way. I believe it does go, like some of it's going generally up this way and across this way, and like managing to make it over here to then go back down this way, where this also, some of it goes across this way and goes down here. Some of it branches off and goes back because there's currents going westward here, so it bends back from that pressure, crossing this boundary, which is why it cuts the Earth apart here, probably because it's running into it. Basically, it's bending into this current, so instead of like breaking this eddy, it basically goes underneath the eddy and then out, cutting the Greenland from Canada, essentially, but having a eddy at the Hudson Bay region, and then the current continuing down here, along basically the boundary between the eastern and western pressures of these currents, as this pushes the margins over here. As we talked about, the pressure moves this way, where subduction seizes over here and is like commences over here, I believe. I don't know if it commences when the seizing, but it's occurring over here in the Americas eastward, particularly South America, although definitely North America too. Okay, so what else? I think I probably said what I wrote here, so if you want to read what I wrote. There's probably things. It's really long. Holy crap. Holy crap, guys. Maybe we should read it. Added some things. So what is generally going on here? Started with the red and aqua current. Okay. We'll just assume I described it. Fracture zones. This makes portion through Mediterranean. East African Rift area. Okay, it's fine. Then I added a bit more where I was thinking higher focus on the aqua and red currents, so I just redrew it with just these currents where it goes across and goes up and wraps around. So this current is basically doing a little loop here and then continuing and then seemingly going up, but also continuing to go across here. And just so some portion of the aqua current is just wrapping around Antarctica and then looping up as it's doing that, looping off of westward currents to go north and looping here as well as in here, just creating this space as it interacts. But then the westward propagating current bends off where it runs into the aqua current going north to the North Pole that then is running. So my thought was it goes around the red current here going westward and basically cuts north in a substantial amount. While some of it goes eastward, a good chunk goes northward, and basically something with what's going on here happens, where my thought was kind of crossing, like here they cross, but here they cross by like a change in the way where the aqua side continues straight ahead. The red side cuts underneath it and then continues, and then there's the aspect where there's a boundary over here, but then it continues and joins one of the currents going either way here, because it could go this way or this way out of here, probably doing both in parts. But notice what's happening with this red current. It's going down, up, down, and it's just creating this wave pattern. As well as branching off this way and doing its own loop. So there's two loops. One's going counterclockwise, eastward with a counterclockwise loop, and one's going westward with a clockwise loop. Crazy. Plus they're interacting with the North Pole, probably in ways I didn't capture here. Let's kind of think about this for a second. If there's a big ol' eddy, can we... Eddy going counterclockwise here. It's kind of reaching up to the North Pole. And then another eddy that was going clockwise over this way. Well, and then going through here, through the North Pole. So almost like lassoed to the North Pole. It's interesting they're like right on top of each other. There's probably some others. I mean, there's certainly eddies everywhere, but of that scale, maybe it happens around Africa too, and some it's big enough to maybe have one. I mean, these are huge eddies though. These are massive. the scale of this. Massive. Some of it going off this way and going with this current northward. So cutting over that way, leading to like an eddy around Bermuda here. Some of it cutting down this way, joining this current. Probably with nuance. Well, definitely with nuance, but like in terms of like the way the waters are mixing and things are not mixing is probably something of interest, where it's not just like they really are like different currents that are interacting when things like this are happening, when they kind of join each other. Okay, so that's that post. I think pretty interesting details. Then a recent Nick Zentner episode was talking to Karen Siglock, and I checked out her paper with, I believe it's Michael Mahalynook. This paper. Mitchell. Okay. On like deep mantle stuff and the modeling of the Pacific across time. So let's just read this post. I don't really know what's in it exactly. I kind of glanced through because yesterday was so awkwardly I'm like, I don't remember what I wrote at all. It took maybe like 20 minutes to get any bearing of what's happening in my post, like why I was writing it. So it's kind of like, what the hell is this? Anyway, orange, so these ones, Mez and Ang, whatever they are slabs, whatever the names are formed from westward pressures, is what they're saying. So there's certain slabs under North America. Some of them are formed from western pressures, like pushing westward into North America. So maybe we should go back to this real quick, like pushing westward into North America. So there are westward pressures into North America. And then the slab, these things are like, this is very much where the Appalachians are. And then this goes up to just past the Hudson Bay. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. I haven't really looked into these very much to have much of a thought on them. But then the other ones, the green ones, are eastward subducting. So there's actually subducting plates or evidence of material subducted under North America, both eastward and westward propagating. In the Farallon plates, I don't know, CR is maybe Columbia River basalt related some reason. No. These are all Farallon plates, that's right. I kept thinking they were like Wrangellia related or something. Like, no. These are all Farallon plates, and then these are westward subducting plates. Okay, so, it occurred to me that the Farallon South slab really reminds me of Hikurangi Plateau. So just kind of looking at this, there's like this, and then wedged up in it and even overtop it, overlapping it as if it like ran into it. Kind of wedged in there. It doesn't quite fit up there, but kind of wedged in there. Shape of a wedge. It makes me think of a wedge. What was I saying? Well, Hikurangi Plateau, which is this. So like here, wedge, Hikarangi Plateau. It makes me think of Hikarangi Plateau relative to some other wedging things that are just like that's part of how it happens. I don't know what to make of it exactly. I'm still not completely sure if these things are like forming away from North America and then truly subducting as it's interpreted. The evidence probably is pretty strongly in favor of it like moved from elsewhere to go underneath North America in these instances. But I'm not completely sure if like some movement away from North America of some like other thing might lead to like Western Pacific might lead to like reformation of things that then get confused as like flowing in, subducting, when it's really flowing in to replace the void after the void is like actually open. Like if there's something like a cork, you start sliding the cork, the bottle's still closed. It's gotta come all the way out for the cork to pop. At which point, maybe it even has like a cork-like behavior of like shooting off the thing once it opens, but then inflows starting from like the entry point inward, a flow of something that then gets confused as this subducting plate kind of thing by its like interaction with the crust, leading to all the observations that we then deem as basis for these kinds of things, as well as that there is like generally a mass down there that we can detect because it flowed in, filled the void that was formed by the outflow of the Western Pacific had North America atop it. Like North America was atop this region, seemingly atop Shatsky Rise even, so possibly like all the way over at one point to like here region. And then below that was like Philippines attached to over here, and then on the other side Australia. Like off of this point though was Philippines attached to Australia down here, which was then rotated all the way over and attached over here, which was then all atop this region right there. In like a very early stage. That seems not so early though that Australia didn't move yet. After Australia moved, so that Papua New Guinea was forming. I always say Papua New Guinea, but it wasn't even formed until later. But it formed in the process. It was forming here. Like the underlying crust was there. It just kind of got draped over with more material pretty much. But the general location existed, so that's what I mean when I say Papua New Guinea. Just for clarity, I don't know. Okay. Let me just make sure I read all this. So then, it occurred to me, was then the totality of the Upper Mantle Farallon North, FN, Lower Mantle Farallon North, CR, Western Farallon, W. I think that's what it stands for. So these two, I found that that's what those stand for. W I could not find. Which then strongly suggests the Farallon plate has a relationship to Ontong Java Nui complex broken into Ontong Java, Manihiki, and Hikarangi by having undergone a similar process. Whew, good thing I didn't move on because I totally forgot about this part. So, what am I saying? I'm saying Ontong Java Nui hypothesis is that Ontong Java, Manihiki, and Hikurangi all formed as one, and then they broke apart like this. But Hikurangi then got wedged in some kind of wedging location, which I'm not really paralleling particularly well, besides that it's just some kind of wedging corner thing. Where that's like a deep subducted layers that presumably behave the same across scale in some way to maybe be able to draw a comparison like this. But where they were all this, and this were all together as one. So was the Farallon plate, is what I'm saying. Where all these chunks behave like the Ontong Java Nui complex breaking up, perhaps, where like Hikurangi got wedged over here, while like Manihiki is over here, like the western one, and then like Ontong Java is like the northern, central, lower, and the lower mantle. Upper mantle north and lower mantle north, that's right. So one that's like deep, so this one doesn't seem to have a upper and lower mantle segment, so it's probably not as bulky. I don't know. Actually, thinking of the images, I don't think that's true. I'm not completely sure though. That might be images of the westward subducting stuff here. This is probably westward subducting here underneath. So at a lower energy is this stuff going on. Kind of like internal mountains kind of vibe. Not to compare them to mountains, just a little fun thing to say, pardon me. So the general idea is that this stuff was out here when North America was over here, and then North America moved on top of it. I guess with the westward subduction? It moved atop the westward subduction? It's so weird that this to me, like, is literally suggesting that a pre-existing region of the same general shape and orientation as North America already was forming off the coast of North America as it was moving there, and then it just happened to perfectly overlay it. That to me is a really strong indicator that it formed atop it. At least, like, generally speaking, that it didn't, like, actually move onto it. This paper also noticeably has the triangle, the starting triangle. This starting triangle. It's unfortunate because people don't know about the drill samples because they're too anomalous that people won't talk about them. It's so ridiculous. It's like, they want just like firm rigidity of like comfort and safety of knowing without actually knowing. Like the people behind the like hushing of anomalies, the like psyche and mental process going on is a underlying desire for like cohesiveness in their day-to-day life as a human being going about life. And they get in a position where they can then say, this is what is. And once it's like established within the group, like either you say that or you don't get to be part of the group. Who are you? Nobody. You don't matter. Your opinion doesn't matter because you're not part of the group. But then what happens is people who are earnestly and genuinely just like going about their pursuit of understanding don't know the freaking anomalies that these hushers don't want others to know, like evidence for expanding Earth. They don't want to talk about the expanding Earth model. They're like, hush, that theory has no basis. Well, if you don't look at the evidence. Like, that's how like that maintains though, is by like not looking at the evidence that raises alarms, even if it's something like like within the paradigm of plate tectonics. Like, the observation of drill samples in the East Mariana Basin, they don't look at these drill samples and say, oh no, someone's gonna use this as evidence of the expanding Earth model. We can't talk about it. What they say is, that doesn't fit what we think. We have an excuse for it, so we're gonna ignore it. Problem solved. Easy, but not like this is what happens. Is it doesn't get like incorporated. Widespread. No, I mean, I don't want to talk about this instance too much. I already have several times probably. It's just what happens. Because it just wasn't like that. Kudos. Anyone who knew what the hell that was. It's like, oh yeah, I don't need to do this because I have this animation here. The opening of the Pacific. It's a current running into some kind of resistance, if it can, like bounded resistance, where then it wraps around and does like this. Back and forth, but over time it leads to so much back and forth that it actually starts to build a like boundary this way, leading to instead back and forth the other way. That then leads to this kind of interaction. But I was thinking maybe it does like a certain number in a more general sense than the Pacific, and then like let's just say 4. That then like leads to I didn't do that. Something like this, which then leads to like another space for like more of this to happen, but maybe I don't know exactly. Some general back and forth of this process. I believe it's very important. I don't know what to make of it yet. In terms of how all of this stuff happens. That's why... Anyway, let's not get distracted on that. Just gonna put this here because it's a mapping of aspects of how the Ontong Java Nui complex was broken and segmented. So here's Ontong Java, here's all these currents. Currents going northward along the eastern margin of Australia, running into other currents, bending off this way, and physically taking Manihiki and pushing it this way, away from Ontong Java. Pushing it while there's other currents running into it. Some is deflecting up this way, while some is deflecting down through this way and pushing Hikurangi down that way. So that's going on. Some other currents. There's that current from Antarctica that then transitions over to here. Wedging currents that then bends northward. Let's check this out. 1 second.
North America comes along. And so then they get, they get pushed and they slowly accrete, and that is the Johnston terrain wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So they get red ones are all the terrains that used to be strung up.
Sorry, I was muted. I was saying this seems like a back arc basin that the Hawaiian sphere went through. And then I just noticed this region. I don't know. Let's keep going.
The arcs, the Central Alaska arcs that used to be peacefully here doing their arc thing until North America comes along. And so then they get, they get pushed and they slowly accrete, and that is the Johnston terrain wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So they get dislodged from their substrate, which is this Orcas microplate.
Okay. These are like this area. And she just said they get dislodged from their substrate of a Orcas microplate, like this kind of thing. Dislodged from their substrate. In the past, I've proposed for that this location, the Hawaiian sphere went through here, which was actually over here when it went over to this point, which was actually over here. And suggested that then, like, all of this region swung out this way to move away and dislodge from the substrate. So there's a pretty substantial precedent. I mean, it's not that scale, but it's pretty substantial scale. I thought that was pretty fascinating. Dislodge from the substrate. Let's check out this one. I'm like, oh god, am I muted? I'm gonna mute myself like 4 times while we do this.
Does tomography show the movement of North America is not driven by subducting plates? I.e., does it move continually in same direction while oceanic plates subduct and break off? Slab pole not moving North America? Question mark.
Slab pull is the dominant effect. We know that present day almost all plate motion is explained by where the trenches are. So that's one of the clearest results in geophysics. It's really the trenches that are moving plates. And
Okay, so that's the first thing I quoted. It's really the trenches that are moving the plates. I thought that was really fascinating. I mean, we've definitely related current flows to trenches as basically boundaries of like different directions of flow, like the Mariana Trench is from a current going, the one going northward this way, through this region though, and southward through here, interacting generally north along like a margin to the east of like this line, and generally south along the west of it. That's then where a trench is, and then there's trenches all around. I'm not sure exactly what she meant though, but I could see it pointing to some aspect of the expansion process that I don't quite understand.
it's also nice that in this westward subduction model, there is this pull, right? So in the beginning, there's lots and lots of pull because there's all of this continuous arc of westward subducting. Now, as that slowly gets overridden, there's less and less pull. But even today, there's still some pull in the Caribbean. So the Antilles arc is connected to the North American plate, and so it's still pulling westward.
I believe my thought with that was like just like a concept of a eddy that occupies a space like this, and it like gets its arms around something, then it like pulls it in. But if it doesn't, it like is outside of its region, then it pushes it away. So this pull thing made me think of something of that nature at play. A question about Iceland led to a very interesting response from Karen. Plumes are wet phenomenon. That's just...
Is Iceland a kink in the North Atlantic rift forming a hotspot?
Well, Iceland is a real classical plume. It's far away from all the slabs. It has its classic flood basalt at 50 million years. It has hotspot tracks. So then it depends on, whether you think that Silesia or Yellowstone is close enough to being a normal plume. It's clearly something that's producing a lot of flood basalts in a very short time. So it must be sourcing from a big volume of mantle. It's not a crustal or a very shallow thing, because you need a big volume of mantle to source so much basalt from in such a short time. And so that needs some heat from the mantle and some deep melting. But why that upwelling comes from inside a slab pile or goes through a slab pile, I mean, that's different from Iceland.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why people are so comfortable putting the Yellowstone mantle plume out in the Northeast Pacific. The amount of basalt in Silesia and Yakutat together is just, I don't know how you do that just in a simple spreading ridge. So you need something like a mantle plume, right? Even though you're at a boundary?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, plumes are a wet phenomenon. So there's volatiles, I mean, meaning water, CO2 that's involved in producing so much melt. And I guess, really a theme of your show has been how there's so much volcanism in the Pacific Northwest, and it's always something wet, right? It's a flat slab, supposedly, that was under the lithosphere, and that hydrates the lithosphere. And then when it peels off, it's easier to melt because it's all wet. you can, yeah. So the Yellowstone, and the subduction is a subducting slab in principle is very wet when it goes in. But then nominally it cannot take that water down into the mantle because the upper mantle is nominally anhydrous, so supposedly it cannot take its water down. Whereas if it could take it down to the transition zone can hold tons of water. A transition zone is from about 400 to 700 kilometers. So it's estimated that if the minerals in the transition zone are fully carrying all the water they could, then it would be oceans worth, something like that. Several oceans worth of
Wow.
water in the transition zone. But the question is, how do you get it down? But of course, there are many mineral phases, sort of kind of the dirt and grime that goes down. That's never been researched. Also, alphabet phases, also, and they could well be hydrous and get carried down to 400 kilometers. And once the water's there, it's all fine. It'll be there. And so, if that Yellowstone plume is sourcing that water, it could come up with geothermal heat and that water, and then as soon as it gets to the surface, it melts very happily and makes these voluminous. So it seems like it must have something to do with the water, because that's also what a subduction zone is. It's a water system.
I mean, at one point, I think you suggested.
Isn't that crazy how important water is? The flood. Wow. Just so much. And then interestingly, there's this boundary where like the water can't get by. But how does it get down? How do you get it down there? I was thinking maybe here. At this secondary mantle puncture hole, the water was being drained down. That would be interesting. Or over here, it's a Yellowstone region, so maybe it's that they're talking about specifically. But 400 to 700 kilometers, I feel like I've seen things related to the Earth's expansion process that are at least that deep, so it seems almost certain there would be water related to the global flood down there. I thought that was a fascinating quote, though. So much about water. I was looking for papers on the East Mariana Basin drill sample anomalies that came to mind while writing this, as I had asked a question about it during the live feed in case it might give some clarity on this topic in terms of, like, to me, in terms of, is anyone, like, are they aware of it? And it's not like a, oh, they're not aware of it, like, +1 from me. Like, in it, literally, like, are they? At least, like, that would be good. I'd be mistaken that they're, like, literally not being informed about it. And it's not like it's on them to become aware of it. They have to, like, have the circumstances come about that they actually come to, like, see it. Certainly, like, research, but that, like, it's a needle in the haystack. Why would they find that paper? Like, or those papers, that set of papers on that detail, those details. Like, it's a drop in the bucket. It's not a large spectrum of the papers, so, like, I don't even know how. I think I found it just by looking at Will Sager's papers. I don't know. I'm not completely sure. It might be documented in my videos in, like, the 360s when I first came across it and how that happened. But this paper, though, it said, described that there is already a paper. So they're saying, although basalt's underlying late Cretaceous sediments were recovered at Site 61, they are thought to have come from an episode of volcanism post-dating seafloor spreading. So we're going to ignore this data and just say, it must have happened sometime after the spreading. We'll literally ignore it. They don't explain it. It's not explained. It's just ignored. And then alternatively, Hilda et al. Have suggested that the Mariana Basin is underlain by late Cretaceous crust, meaning when the Entente Java Plateau formed, corresponding to, at least that's what it's become timing-wise, corresponding to the Cretaceous Magnetic Quiet Zone of 120 to 83 million. This hypothesis requires the Mariana Basin to have formed during a period of intraplate spreading about 100 million years ago, meaning the Pacific plate spread about 100 million years ago during the Cretaceous Magnetic Quiet Zone, but that's not convenient for plate tectonics. So instead of recognizing what the evidence shows, we're gonna say, well, who knows? Could have come from who knows? There's probably other stuff underneath it. Who cares if it doesn't look like an oceanic plateau whatsoever? It's probably underneath it. How did it get there? From a spreading ridge? Are you saying there's a spreading ridge at that location? You know, like I don't know, maybe a intra-plate spreading ridge? See what's going on here? We're literally ignoring the data, coming to similar conclusions, but in a way where we ignore the data, rather than just acknowledging the data. Then I read the abstract of the Hilda paper. So this is the actual paper, Evolution of the Western Pacific and Its Margin, from 1977. An evolutionary history of the Western Pacific is presented by reconstructing spreading systems of the region since Middle Mesozoic time on the basis of marine magnetic lineations, paleomagnetic data, and deep sea drill sample, or drill something results, and selected other data. Subduction along the Asian plate margin throughout this time has resulted in general northward movement of the plates surrounding Asia. An east-west spreading ridge system offset by north-south transform faults of great length extended from the Pacific into the Tethys Sea and migrated north as the oceanic plates to the north were being subducted along Asia. I don't remember exactly why I underlined that twice. Possibly in relationship to dextral slip stuff along the Chinook Trough, and just generally to the things we've been finding with currents going north along North America's western margin and then turning into Asia, leading to probably a lot of this stuff. Segments of this ridge system were subducted at different times along the Asian margin, in some cases initiating marginal sea formation. So that's kind of odd. Like, bloop, bloop, bloop. It didn't just kind of like subduct uniformly. You know, uniformitarianism, buddy. That's what it is, right? Uniformly subduct? No, no, no. It said, I'll do it here, I'll do a little there, a little there, a little there. Who has time to subduct uniformly when I could just do it all? Boop, 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 boop. Shoot. As the plates south of these ridge segments started to subduct at the Asian margin, new spreading ridges, I guess I should read the whole thing. Segments of this ridge system were subducted at different times. As the plates south of these ridge segments started to subduct at the Asian margin, new spreading ridges formed far to the south, rifting India from Antarctica at about 100 million, and Australia from Antarctica about 52 million. So these are very closely related to the plate reorganization events of those times. Interestingly, when the Hawaiian Sphere runs into North America, India rifts from Antarctica. It's a kind of odd cause and effect, maybe. I don't know if it's a cause and effect, but it seems like the Hawaiian Sphere running into North America is predominantly like a thing that really drives the plate reorganization. But I might be putting too much weight in it. Maybe it's more like everywhere and less Hawaii only. Subduction of the Pacific Ridge system in the north and southwest Pacific resulted in a change in direction of the Pacific plate motion from north-northwest to west-northwest at about 45 million, relating to the Hawaiian Bend probably as well, which we've previously recognized. The bend is not when the Pacific plate motion changes, so it's not even timed appropriately. According to papers, like, according to the evidence. I know we don't like evidence. We'd rather just know what we're talking about. It's so much easier to be done. Shoot, who wants to do all that? Seems like maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's not worth it. Is it? I don't even know. It might not be worth it. Maybe it's best just to live simple lives. The end. Simple, peaceful, happy. Not making waves. I don't know. The long north-south transform faults of the Western Pacific provided zones of weakness along which new subduction was initiated. This occurred along the present north-south trend of the Philippine Arc along the, let's see, is it literally just the Philippines? Like, what? East Philippine Arc, I guess so. I guess so. The up to the Apalaki caldera where Hawaii ran into it, at least by its pressures. Long, blah blah blah, along the Kyushu Palu Ridge, which probably was on here. Okay, that's the Florida looking segment here. So subduction along here occurred. And along here. And in the original position further east, and along the approximate present position of the Lau Havre Ridge. I don't remember how it was spelled. Okay. Ooh. We're all the way over to Fiji now. Lau Ridge. Huh. Okay, it's oceanic crust in the West Philippine Sea and possibly the South Fiji Basin was entrapped by development of the new subduction zones. Subduction of the Pacific Plate accelerated as the system became well established. By about 24 million, back arc spreading was initiated as a result of the faster subduction and formed the Miocene and younger eastern portions of the western Pacific marginal seas. The marginal seas at both ends of the Sunda Arc have more complex histories, being formed by a combination of processes including entrapment and rifting of the plates along transformed plate boundaries. Lots of things in this. This is just the abstract. I didn't really look at the paper. Here's another one I didn't particularly look at. Let's just skip this one. I remember it wasn't that exciting. It's certainly not as exciting as this one, which I think we should talk about. Here, maybe let's do this one real quick. It's just one post. Just the abstract. Relatively high mean absolute plate. So this is about the ocean basin evolution, global scale plate reorganization events since Pangea. So they're kind of going through more than just the 100 one. So relatively high mean absolute plate motion rates between 140 and 120 million. Of 9 to 10 centimeters per year in that time frame, according to geological dating methods, may be related to transient plate motion acceleration. So there's this period of just high acceleration of plate motion, high plate motion, high absolute plate motion, notice 9 to 10. And then an event at 100 million is most clearly expressed in the Indian Ocean and may reflect the initiation of Andean-style subduction along southern continental Eurasia. Where was we? Oh, yeah. Whereas an acceleration at 80 million of mean rates from 6 to 8 centimeters. So there's a high velocity expansion period from 140 to 120, and then a buildup of resistance, I guess, from 100 to 80, and then from 80 at 80, it accelerates 6 to 8 as if some kind of resistance is broken through with regard to the Hawaiian sphere going back southward. Like maybe 100 to 80 is where resistance is building as the sphere approaches the North Pole for some reason, kind of clogging the process. Reflects the initial northward acceleration of India and simultaneous speed up of plates in the Pacific. So I believe it was 100 that it was the breakup of India from Antarctica, and then 80 reflects a northward acceleration when it speeds up, and then an event at approximately 50 million expressed in relative and some absolute plate motion changes around the globe, and in a reduction of global mean plate speeds. So again, resistance builds up, indicates from 6 to 4.4 to 5, indicates that an increase in collisional forces, meaning the expansion is actually running into resistance, and ridge subduction events in the Pacific play a significant role in modulating plate velocities. Okay. And then this came out like a week ago whenever I came across this. November. I don't know. Paper's going around though. It's in it's a geology paper. What's that over there? What huh? Did you see that? What was that? That was something, dude. Over there. That thing. Oh shit. That's why I don't have it. Okay. Oh man, I was like, oh no, I might be muted. So, evidence suggests Earth had a ring in the Ordovician. Highlights. Earth may have had a ring during the middle Ordovician, about 466 million. Breakup of an asteroid passing within Earth's Roche limit likely formed the ring. They're just coming up with a reason there's a ring. Among several features preserved is a near-equatorial band of impact craters. And then they propose a shading of Earth by the ring may have triggered a global icehouse period. So there's some evidence of some global cooling event related to this ring, I guess, as well as the just the evidence for the ring. All large planets in our solar system have rings, and it has been suggested that Mars may have had a ring in the past. This raises the question of whether Earth also had a ring in the past. Here we examine the paleolatitudes of 21 asteroid impact craters from an anomalous 40 million year period of enhanced meteor impact cratering known as the Ordovician impact spike, and find that all craters fall in an equatorial band approximately 30 degrees, or less than or equal to, despite approximately 70% of exposed potentially crater-preserving crust lying outside of this band. The beginning of this period is marked by a large increase in L-chondrite material accumulated in sedimentary rocks at 465 million radiometric dating, which together with the impact spike has long been suggested to result from breakup of the L-chondrite parent body in the asteroid belt. Our binomial probability calculation indicates that it's highly unlikely that the observed crater distribution was produced by bolides on orbits directly from the asteroid belt. We therefore propose that instead a large fragment of the L-chondrite parent body broke up due to tidal forces during a near-miss encounter with the Earth. Okay, so the Colburn Bible. It is known, and the story comes down from ancient times, that there was not one creation, but two, a creation and a recreation. It is a fact known to the wise that the earth was utterly destroyed once, then reborn on a second wheel of creation. At the time of the great destruction of earth, God caused a dragon from out of heaven to come and encompass her about. The dragon was frightful to behold. It lashed its tail, it breathed out fire and hot coals, and a great catastrophe was inflicted upon mankind. The body of the dragon was wreathed in a cold, bright light, and beneath on the belly was a ruddy hued glow, while behind it trailed a flowing tail of smoke. It spewed out cinders and hot stones, and its breath was foul and stenchful, poisoning the nostrils of men. Its passage caused great thunderings and lightnings to rend the thick darkened sky, all heaven and earth being made hot. Although that kind of counters with what they were saying, the ice thing. Although something we'll see in a moment will actually be fine. The seas were loosened from their cradles and rose up, pouring across the land. There was an awful shrilling trumpeting which outpowered even the howling of the unleashed winds. Men, stricken with terror, went mad at the awful sight in the heavens. They were loosed from their senses and dashed about, crazed, not knowing what they did. The breath was sucked from their bodies, and they were burnt with a strange ash. Then it passed, leaving earth enwrapped within a dark and glowering mantle, which was ruddily lit up inside. The bowels of the earth were torn open in great wreathing upheavals, and a howling whirlwind rent the mountains apart. The wrath of the sky monster was loosed in the heavens. It lashed about in flaming fury, roaring like 1,000 thunders. It poured down fiery destruction amid a welter of thick black blood. So awesome was the fearfully aspected thing that the memory mercifully departed from man. His thoughts were smoldered under a cloud of forgetfulness. The earth vomited forth great gusts of foul breath from awful mouths opening up in the midst of the land. The evil breath bit at the throat before it drove men mad and killed them. Those who did not die in this manner were smothered under a cloud of red dust and ashes, or were swallowed by the yawning mouths of earth, or crushed beneath crashing rocks. The first sky monster was joined by another, which swallowed the tail of the one going before, but the two could not be seen at once. The sky monster reigned and raged above earth, doing battle to possess it, but the many-bladed sword of God cut them in pieces, and their falling bodies enlarged the land and the sea. In this manner, the first earth was destroyed by calamity descending from out of the skies. The vaults of heaven had opened to bring forth monsters more fearsome than any that ever haunted the uneasy dreams of men. Men and their dwelling places were gone, only sky boulders and red earth remained where once they were, but amidst all of the desolation a few survived, for man is not easily destroyed. They crept out from caves and came down from the mountainsides, etc. The earth, only true altar of God, had offered up a sacrifice of life and sorrow to atone for the sins of mankind. Man had not sinned indeed, but in the things he had failed to do. Man suffers not only for what he does, but for what he fails to do. He is not chastised for making mistakes, but for failing to recognize and rectify them. Sounds pretty relevant to the drill samples in the East Mariana Basin. Then the great canopy of dust and cloud, which encompassed the earth, enshrouding it in heavy darkness, was pierced by ruddy light, and the canopy swept down in great cloudbursts and raging storm waters. When the light of the sun pierced the earth's shroud, the earth again knew night and day. So, like, if there was some kind of ice age thing going on, that maybe the shroud of this, the foul air was purified, a new air clothed the reborn earth, shielding her from the dark, hostile void of heaven. The rainstorms ceased to, which is probably because, like, again related to the cold, like that basically the ethereal cosmic energies around the earth got through the atmosphere and reached the earth in a way that it, like, temporarily cold was present. The rainstorms ceased to beat upon the face of the land, and the waters stilled their turmoil. Earthquakes no longer tore the earth open, nor was it burned and buried by hot rocks. Land masses were re-established in stability and solidity. That's crazy. Standing firm in the midst of the surrounding waters. The oceans fell back to their assigned places, and the land stood steady upon its foundations. The sun shone upon land and sea, and life was renewed upon the face of the earth. Rain fell gently once more. Man survived, but he was not the same. The sun was not as it had been, and a moon had been taken away. Man stood in the midst of renewal and regeneration. He looked up into the heavens above in fear for the awful powers of destruction lurking there. Henceforth, the placid skies would hold a terrifying secret. Man found the new earth firm and the heavens fixed. He rejoiced, but also feared, for he lived in dread that the heavens would again bring forth monsters and crash about him. The face of the land was changed, and earth was littered with rocks and stones which had fallen when the structure of heaven collapsed. One generation groped in the desolation and gloom, and as the thick darkness was dispelled, its children believed they were witnessing a new creation. Time passed, memory dimmed, and the record of events was no longer clear. Generation following generation followed generation, and as the ages unfolded, new tongues and new tales replaced the old. Whoa. Crazy. I don't know. I mean, I've seen reason to believe the Colburn Bible has validity in ways that are, like, I mean, it looks related to the story of this. There's also, let's see if I can find it. This one, it very much reminds the act, like, in another angle that's not really related to the, like, if we say that this actually, the earth actually had a ring, that would, the reason we're saying that is largely based on these impact structures being largely in this equatorial band. That's why we're saying earth had a ring. But then there's this non-random distribution of Euler poles ignoring the plate tectonics, is the distribution of Euler poles, which are not randomly distributed. One of the outstanding results of this study is the distribution of Euler poles, which are not randomly distributed, but smeared out along a weakly developed girdle. Very much reminds me of this. So it's possible that we're confusing these Ordovician impacts with impacts when they're really eddy centers that were in the equatorial region and leading to impacts, but not some cosmic thing, but really because of a belt of eddies in the flood currents that was doing it. Let's see what else we got. Oh, shit. I think we gotta stop. Can maybe do this. Right now, this hurricane's passing. I noticed there was a eddy down here, and then the hurricane. So I just clipped a video to get the actual airflow. So we're seeing current flowing over here and going up and in. So that's one aspect. And then down here, kind of running into each other here. So going over and generally up, especially like in this area, going over and up. So generally from here going up, I guess, or just kind of filling this with pressure as like a wedge for the current to running into each other here, basically. But then eastward propagating here it goes, and then in here, westward propagating into it as well. So that's interesting. And then there's southward propagating along the western margin of North America, eastward along the western margin of South America, all into this area, as well as westward from generally Africa and generally from over here. Some back currents, but applying a westward pressure over here. So like this, and I noticed like there's a chakra here. Like there's even like a kind of chakra out there in the way the airflow is. And around that chakra, currents are flowing to there. And then up here, the airflow. So notice like beyond this point, it's like there's a point. I don't know if it's exactly here, but there's some point somewhere where it basically bends up this way instead and goes to the Appalachians. And I said that the Appalachians then is a size limiter in this eddy. Like if the Appalachians were not there, this current could have maybe went around this way and formed a larger eddy, but it basically prevented that. So it was anything that went north went along the mountains, it seemed, as a actual like limiter in the size of the eddy that was forming, because it was a pretty big storm. But then it's got this eddy over here that's really acting as like a brace as this current comes in and this current comes in. There's just an eddy here that's just been like holding this location so that this current runs into it and deflects off of it as this current runs into it and holds the pressure so it stays there. And it just acts as like a switch, like on off kind of thing that directs the flow over here. And then across North America, almost like the air is like at a lower energy state when it just kind of falls off of the continents and into the ocean, and like onto the ocean, but flowing out into the sea levels. So it's like more, it's difficult for the air to go onto the continents. It's kind of what I was thinking, to a degree, where like generally what happens is the continents lead to like outward pressures. They're like high pressure regions in general that other currents off of the ocean struggle, at least nearer the surface, to actually make it up there onto the continents, which then holds a boundary over here just by that. That's a thing that happens, I guess. That's what I was thinking. And it's also flowing southward along the Appalachians, so like again the mountains are at play here to go into this region. Then there's another eddy over here. So here's that eddy. This is as the storm. In one of the videos, it's like here, as the storm moves north, this eddy has not really moved at all. It's just kind of sitting there. Let's check it out real quick. It's still there, but the storm is now up here, making landfall. The eye is making landfall right now. Let's see how much it changed. It moved a little bit west, very little. Interesting. I wonder if as this storm goes this way, this will start to move up to here and then maybe go through there. Like this starts to push a little further north. Cuts in a little further north as this holds, like pushes upward to give more room for currents to flow into that area. So then that moves it up further. I don't know. I feel like the wind and the weather in general are going to be really useful to study more closely. That thing was massive. Amount of rain. We didn't really get much. It was crazy. It's like a couple moments, and that's about it. Wow, look at that thing. Looks kind of weird. Like not quite. Doesn't really have a cohesive eye. It's probably not that strong anymore. Or as strong as weakening. Eye, and then the eye dissipates. As soon as it makes landfall, the eye starts to dissipate. Turns into like a bar too. It's almost like it reverts back to a bar from like the currents going back and forth to a point where it leads to an eddy by going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Something to do with that kind of thing happening, leading to an eddy that then leads to, when it uneddies, some kind of bar aspect, maybe? I don't know. It's kind of curious. It's past us. We really didn't get much of anything. I put a little fort for the holy basil I got in the yard. It would have probably got destroyed. So I put like 3 bags of mulch, boop, 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 both sides. Put a little. That mulch ain't moving. Made a little triangle house. block the wind. And then I should make it. So I got a holy basil still. I was thinking of digging it up. Alright guys, I got too much to talk about to continue this, so I'll make another episode. With the rest of these things, I was just thinking I have even more stuff to talk about. I should go back. Okay. Okay. Till then. Thanks, guys. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.